Okay, let's just get this out of the way. Dating in your 40s. It sounds like a punishment, right? Like something a judge would sentence you to after you get caught trying to return a half-eaten rotisserie chicken. But here I am, a woman who has successfully navigated the treacherous, alligator-infested waters of dating after the big 4-0, and I'm here to tell you it's survivable. And dare I say, hilarious. It's not the romantic comedy you imagined in your 20s, where you accidentally spill a latte on a handsome architect. It's more like a documentary series where every episode ends with you asking your friends, is it weird that his profile picture was just a close-up of a single disembodied thumb? The decision to re-enter the dating world was less of a graceful swan dive and more of an accidental trip and fall into a pool while holding a tray of appetizers. 1 minute, I was happily living my life, curating my Netflix queue and perfecting my sourdough starter. The next, my well-meaning but terrifyingly enthusiastic friend, let's call her Brenda, had wrestled my phone away from me and was swiping on my behalf like she was trying to start a fire. Let's be real. At this age, nobody is showing up to the party empty-handed. We've all got baggage. In your 20s, baggage was like a complicated relationship with your college roommate. In your 40s, your baggage has its own passport, a full set of designer luggage, and probably a tiny yappy dog tucked inside a Louis Vuitton carry-on. My own baggage includes, but is not limited to, a failed marriage that ended amicably but still feels like a weird little scar, a deep-seated fear of Tupperware cabinets, and an encyclopedic knowledge of every single episode of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I remember this one date with a perfectly nice guy, a divorced dad who seemed normal enough. We were having dinner and the conversation turned to our pasts. I gave him the breezy, sanitized version of my story. He then proceeded to unpack his entire life's drama like he was unboxing a new gadget on YouTube. By the end of it, I felt less like I was on a date and more like I was his therapist, his lawyer, and his gastroenterologist all rolled into one. I wanted to hand him a copay on my way out. I've been on more first dates in the past few years than I've had hot meals, and I've come to a startling conclusion. First dates in your 40s are not romantic. They are job interviews. You're the hiring manager, he's the candidate, and you're both trying to figure out if the other person is qualified for the unpaid, emotionally demanding position of person I might tolerate seeing again. I once went out with a man who I swear brought a mental resume with him. He spent the first 20 minutes listing his accomplishments. He had climbed Kilimanjaro. He had started a disruptive tech company. He had a surprisingly low resting heart rate. It felt less like a flirty conversation and more like a performance review where he was giving himself straight A's. I just sat there nodding and sipping my Chardonnay, feeling like I should be taking notes and promising to circle back with HR. In my 20s, if a guy wasn't interested, you at least got the courtesy of a slow fade. The phone calls would get less frequent, the plans would get vaguer, and eventually you'd just sort of mutually drift apart like two sad, lonely ice floes. Now we have ghosting. It's the sudden, unexplained disappearance of someone you were actively communicating with. My personal ghosting Hall of Fame moment was with a guy I'll call the architect. We had 3 amazing dates. We talked for hours, we had great chemistry. He even helped me assemble an IKEA bookshelf, which is basically the modern equivalent of getting engaged. We made plans for a 4th date. The morning of, I texted him to confirm. And then, nothing. Silence. Radio silence so profound I started to wonder if I had hallucinated the entire relationship. But after you've been ghosted a few times, you develop an immunity. You realize it has absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with their inability to handle a simple adult conversation. Think of ghosting as a gift. It's the universe's way of weeding out the cowards for you. Before I started dating in my 40s, I thought a midlife crisis just meant a man buying a red sports car. Oh, you sweet, naive child. I am now here to report that the modern male midlife crisis is a rich and varied tapestry of questionable choices, new hobbies, and terrible facial hair. I once went on a date with a man who, halfway through our appetizers, announced that he was quitting his stable, high-paying job as an accountant to become a foraging influencer. He then spent the next 10 minutes showing me pictures on his phone of various mushrooms, explaining which ones were deliciously edible and which ones would make you see the face of God and then kill you. You will encounter a whole zoo of crisis havers. There's the "I'm suddenly very spiritual" guy, who now wears prayer beads and talks a lot about ayahuasca retreats. There's the I'm getting back in shape guy, whose entire personality is now CrossFit, and who speaks a language composed entirely of acronyms like WOD and AMRAP. There's the I'm a musician now guy, who will invite you to his open mic night to watch him perform a soulful acoustic cover of a song by Limp Bizkit. This, my friends, is the single greatest superpower you gain after turning 40. All those years of experience, the bad dates, the failed relationships, the friendships that went sour, the bosses who took credit for your work, they weren't for nothing. They were training. They were honing your instincts. You have now developed a highly sophisticated internal bullshit detector. It's a finely tuned instrument that can spot a red flag from a mile away, even if that red flag is disguised as a charming smile and a really great head of hair. I was on a date with a guy who was, on paper, perfect. Handsome, successful, funny. But my internal alarm bells were going off like a car alarm in a quiet neighborhood. He was a little too smooth. His compliments felt a little too rehearsed. He kept talking about how much he valued honesty and authenticity, which is, ironically, the biggest red flag of them all. The old me would have ignored that feeling, but the 40-year-old me listened to that little voice in my gut. I ended the date politely and never saw him again. A few weeks later, a mutual friend told me he was, in fact, secretly married. My bullshit detector had saved the day. Your 40s are for data analysis. You now have a massive database of human behavior to draw from, and your gut instinct is no longer a vague feeling. It's an evidence-based conclusion. You're not cynical. You're just educated. This is the most empowering truth of all. You're no longer easily fooled. You're the bouncer at the velvet rope of your own heart, and you're not letting any riffraff in. After hearing all of this, you might be tempted to delete the apps, invest in a lifetime supply of cozy sweatpants, and officially become that eccentric neighborhood lady with 17 cats. And listen, I get it. Some days, that life sounds like a blissful paradise. But the truth is, while the process can be absurd and exhausting, it's also full of potential. The key is to change your definition of success. Dating in your 40s isn't about desperately searching for a missing puzzle piece. You are already a complete puzzle. You are a masterpiece, actually. So go ahead. Get out there. Be bold. Be picky. And be unapologetically yourself. The right person for you won't be intimidated by your baggage, scared by your success, or confused by your bullshit detector. They'll be thrilled by it. And remember, if he doesn't make you laugh harder than your group chat does, you don't have time for him.